Welcome back to the I Want to Save Money YouTube channel. I am Miss Amelia J, and today it is time for my January 2026 recap. So I'm going to tell you right now, this video is going to start very positive and it's going to end on a very negative note. So January 2026 was actually not that bad for me. I met my goal. I met some goals. I stayed consistent. I did catch a few late fees to make that happen though. All right, so I am looking at Origin, not YNAB. I still have an account with both. I'm probably going to make a decision here in the next month and cancel one of them. I wouldn't be faced with charges again until September or October. So I have plenty of time to make a decision which one I actually want to stick with. I just know I don't want to pay for both. And with Origin, I had to spend a lot of time in here. So I have it set so that I have to go in and review every transaction to make sure it's in the right category. So one thing I prefer about YNAB is the way I can break down not just the categories, but the subcategories. So for auto, for example, well, there's my car note, but then there's also insurance and there's also fuel and any vehicle maintenance. I want all of that under auto and transport or auto expenses or auto or, something along those lines. And this doesn't really allow you to break it down the same way, or maybe I'm just not familiar enough with the platform. Maybe it does, but for me, there's just kind of a category, not a subcategory. That to me is a bit less helpful when I'm looking at my expenses. The other issue I had was everything was not accurate. I've gone through and I've approved each of my transactions. So it's there's no reason for things to be this off. For example, I had groceries at $55 and it said that was 30% of my expenses. If $55 covered 30% of all of my expenses, this YouTube channel would be about trips and vacations and shopping and spending money however the hell I feel because I've got it. Be honest. Anyways, I'm going through each transaction. I didn't even think to look at my income. Apparently it put my 2 paychecks as expenses in some random expense category. So that made everything out of whack, and I spent a little bit of time going through all of this. So coming in at 41.6% of my expenses, no surprise, is rent. Now, this was another month I did pay $200 in late fee. So it's a $150 late fee, and then once you're past that 3-day mark, you have to use your credit card. You can't just use the bank account because they're not going to wait for it to transfer if you're already late. So there's additional $50 fee on top of that. February's rent will be paid February 3rd. They don't hit you with the charges until the 4th. So from here on out, I should be caught up enough that I'm not going to face any late fees associated with rent specifically. I say that now, but today's February 2nd and everything just went to crap. So I may be eating my words. I really hope I'm not. Because basically, when you're in catch-up mode, the problem is if you have bigger expenses, things like rent, you really need to be able to split that up and take that amount from 2 separate paychecks. Because I had to pay it from one paycheck, I had to push that payment back, which solved the immediate problem, but then I'm catching these late fees. I've had to pay $200 in late fees the past 3 months. So I've got to get this under control. We'll get to some of those other factors here in a minute. So 16.6% in Nissan car note, I pay $566 a month. I'm behind, so I paid $615. That's another bill. If I can just get caught up and get my head above water, then I'm fine. And that's the story with just about all of the expenses that are too much or feel like they're too much right now. My Nissan car note is due the 2nd. I can't do the 2nd because that's when rent is due. If I'm already getting behind and catching late fees on rent, then I can't do both. But you have to be fully caught up on your account to move your due date. So that's where I'm at with that, because that's going to make a massive difference. If I can just take that Nissan car note and move it to the 25th, the 22nd, the 28th, somewhere around there, that would be perfect. I do have a bonus check coming February 3rd, and in March, I get 3 paychecks instead of 2. So there are a couple of things that will help me the next few months, but February's off to a bad start, which I'll get to at the end of the video. Nissan insurance, 9.4% of expenses. I'm going to say I have a whole thing about that at the end of the video because that's really where the problem is. So we'll get back to that one. Jetta car note, 6.3% of expenses. 6.3% might not sound like too much, but for me, it's a little bit too much. And it's a payment of $235 a month. I really do not want to cut that. I'm very torn on if I want to continue making this payment because I'm making some headway. This is to protect me from any legal liability on this. I want this over and done so I don't have to be looking back. Oh, are they going to come for me? Oh, am I going to get a letter? Oh, are they going to take me to court? I don't want to have to worry about all that, which is reasonable and makes sense. My initial plan was like $318 a month. So $235 is a significant improvement to that. But it's really just the other things I have to take care of. The problem is I don't want to make this a habit where I'm just putting it off and putting it off and putting it off, because I've been down that road. I wouldn't have some of the collections account I have now if years ago I had the attitude of I'm going to take care of this as quickly as possible. And that's how I look at my debt now. Like I've got to get out of the habit of, oh, I'll deal with that someday, because someday becomes next month, and then it becomes the next year, and then it becomes 2 years later, and then it becomes 3 years later, and it just becomes a snowball effect. So it's like, I feel like removing this payment and saying I just can't do this right now, at least for a few months, is the smartest thing for me to do. But I also just don't want to fall back into that habit. So I may just cancel that. I hate that. I'm going to try to bring in some more money in the next couple of months to help with some of this stuff, but we'll see what happens. 4.7% of my expenses went to taxes. Drinks and dining, 3.4%, $126. There's a lot of negative things to talk about. So one thing that's positive, I started this YouTube channel about a year ago, so happy anniversary to us. And at the time when I was doing some of these monthly recaps, if you look back, especially like May, June, July, or maybe it was June, July, it's somewhere in there, especially over the summer, I spent $500 to $600 just eating out for one single person. Not me and my friends, not me and my family, not kids I'm taking care of, just me. That is insane. And you don't get to sit there and complain you don't have enough money if you're doing stuff like that. So I really wanted to tackle the issues, and not just for the sake of my expenses. A lot of that really has to do with my own mental health and how I think about food and how I think about what I'm eating and how I think about my own health. It's a whole smorgasbord. But long story short, when I started doing these monthly recaps, I genuinely felt like every month I'm going to have to talk about this category. Every month is going to be a huge thing. Every month no one's going to understand what I'm dealing with or think I'm making excuses. And I've made a lot of progress in this area. So I have been eating at home a lot, and I have been being more thoughtful about what I'm eating and what I'm buying and what's in those products. So I'm making a lot of progress. The $100 a month budget, which in my situation probably doesn't need to be there at all. That's really just, I can go out once or twice a week if I feel like I have to, if I get fed up enough, if I get frustrated enough. And having that as a safety net has kind of allowed me to stay the course with preparing my food at home, reading the nutrition labels, like just this whole journey I'm on of having a better relationship with food and what I'm spending on food. $26 is only $26, but still, if things are this tight for me, I don't need to just be blowing $26 here and there. Household made up 3% of my expenses. Okay, so that was laundry, my internet of $71, and a pet screening fee because I had to renew my lease. So I had to pay that to get my lease renewed. So that was household expenses. Pet expenses made up 2.9% of my expenses. So this I'm going to come back to because it kind of leads into the issues I'm having for February. Miscellaneous, 2.5% of my expenses. I had an ATM withdrawal of $40. I have no memory of what that was actually for. Like, I genuinely don't remember. Like, where was I? Oh, I think I was somewhere in like maybe their credit card system wasn't working, so I had to go get cash. That's frustrating though, because I don't remember what that was for. Credit card 2.2% of expenses. Entertainment, 2% of expenses. I went out with some friends. Groceries, 1.5% of expenses, $55. I've been consistent with the grocery budget. And last time, like, I still had plenty of stuff left over, so I didn't have to do that much. This month, I will probably spend at least, I think my full month's budget will be like $120. So I see myself spending more than that for sure in February. Now, getting to the bottom here, a couple of these don't seem quite right. So, for example, for savings emergency fund, it says 1.3% of my expenses, $50. I have it set automatically to take $50 from each paycheck. So where is that other $50? And why is that not accounted in my January thing? I think I'm just gonna go back to YNAB. Like I've had too many issues. I like Origin, don't get me wrong. I think this app is really cool, but YNAB just, I don't have this many issues because I've gone through and I've categorized everything. So why am I looking at this and I'm not seeing accurate stuff? Also, fuel, 0.8% of expenses, $30. My fuel expenses are pretty low, but they're not that low. I think my budget for that is the same as groceries, which is $120 for the month. So I spent more than $30 for fuel for the entire month. I know I did. And then my lowest expense was my phone bill at 0.4%, $17 a month. The reality is I need to be bringing in more money for my situation. That's just, I've been trying to put it off and I've been trying to say, oh, I'm not underpaid. I don't feel I'm underpaid for my position, and that's fine, but I don't have enough for what I need to take care of. I don't have enough for the lifestyle I want to graduate to. And for someone who wants to really aggressively tackle debt and aggressively tackle building the emergency fund, I just don't have enough left over for those things. I really, like I said, it's going to eat me alive if I have to cancel the payments I'm making on this Jetta, because $235 a month is reasonable, and it's certainly more reasonable than what the initial payment was, and it's a pretty major discount on what I owe, but I'm getting to a point I can't do this. So I definitely have some tough decisions to make going forward. Okay, so getting to February. So I did make kind of a stupid mistake, but I'm still investigating what's going on. So regardless of what led to that, I was not able to make my payment. Now today is February 2nd, and a lot of times in the past, if they say like, we'll cancel your policy or your account or whatever on this day, it's usually like the end of the day or end of business day. So I tried calling them this morning. It was canceled this morning. So I start shopping around and it's just a disaster. It's an absolute disaster. Because the thing is, I never should have been paying $349 a month anyways. But as I've said in previous videos, the reason I have not switched insurance is because I am still paying out the wazoo for an expensive policy. I cannot get a cheaper policy somewhere else. I actually did find one, and I'll probably be tackling that tomorrow because I get paid. But I am most likely going to be ending up with a more expensive insurance policy. It kills me because when I was a kid, when I first got my license, when I first started driving and I had $350 policies, you know, I was told, oh, as you get older, it's going to go down. As you have more experience, it's going to go down. Bullshit. Like that is so circumstantial. What a lie. And also if you can pay 6 months at a time, even if you have an inexpensive policy, if you can pay 6 months at a time instead of paying monthly, that saves you money as well. But if you can't save up that amount of money, like you're stuck. And it's so, I don't think anything I've experienced financially genuinely angers me the way car insurance angers me, because you're punished for being poor. You're punished for being poor. You're punished for having a paycheck to paycheck lifestyle. You're punished for not having enough. And all car insurance companies should be worried about is whether I can make my payments and whether they're insuring my vehicle. Like, that's it. That's it. So several years ago, a family member had offered me the use of my car because mine was kaput and I couldn't afford to replace it. It was still in their name. It was still registered to them. It was never, you know, I never owned this vehicle. So as a result, I was not paying for insurance. I drove that vehicle for about a year. Now, to me, this was a great deal. This really helped me out in my situation. It was awesome. But lapses in car insurance increase your rates, which is bullshit. Because, like, financially speaking, this was such an opportunity for me to save money. I had no car note and no car insurance payments. I wish I'd saved more at the time. But anyways, I had no car note and no car insurance payments for about a year. Like, that's awesome. But insurance companies do not look at that. They do not look at whether you made intelligent decisions. They do not look at your explanations for why you made certain choices. They categorize you and they stereotype you, and they look at how likely you are to be a liability in various areas. And going without insurance for a while, I don't quite understand the logic or the reasoning, but I did not have my own vehicle for a year. So yeah, I wasn't paying car insurance for a year. The fuck? Why would I be paying car insurance when I did not have a vehicle? Riddle me that. Then, while I am driving this vehicle that is not mine, I am in a head-on collision. Someone else, now withhold your judgment. Withhold your judgment, please. Hear the whole story. Another driver lost control of their vehicle and hit me head on. Okay, 100% not my fault. It was like a movie, like you know when like someone's dying or gets shot and like someone else is screaming, no! Like that was me in the car. Like as it was coming at me, I was just like, no! Because it wasn't just the fact that I was gonna get hit. It wasn't just the fact that I knew it was gonna freaking hurt. It's how much I knew I was gonna be paying for it down the line. And I am still paying for it today. And I think that's a bunch of BS. So a few months after the accident, I get into another vehicle and my insurance is just through the roof. I think at the time, the cheapest I could find was like $450 a month. $450 a month. It was more than my car note. That's ridiculous. $450 a month is insane for someone in their 30s who started driving when they were 18. That is, I don't care. I don't care. I don't care if insurance companies are offended that I did not maintain car insurance for a year when I didn't have my own car. I don't care if that offends you. That's a stupid thing to be offended by. What a dumb thing to even take into consideration. If I don't have a car for a year, then yeah, I'm probably not going to pay car. Are you stupid? I'm so done with these companies. I'm so done with these companies. Having said all that, getting back to the story. So I was in an extremely horrible mental state at the time, which is pretty understandable. Like I was messed up. I had so many violent thoughts. I had and I get recommended to somebody and she's like the kind of, like she gives me this initial intake questionnaire that's like a longer session than usual. And we don't even get to anything like legitimate. And the next time I see her, which I want to say was like 2 weeks later, maybe, and she's asking me to like rate my week. Like I went out with a friend. I had, so my ratings were higher for that reason. It had nothing to do with my actual mental health. You moron. And she's like, oh, you're already doing so much better. And it's like, I can't do this. Girl, if you don't shut up, I can't. No, I'm not telling you how I feel. I'm not telling you what I think. And trust me, you don't want me to. Because what the actual even is this? So I didn't even tell her about what I was really going through because it's like, honey, you're here to talk to someone who has anxiety about their homework. Okay, that's what you're here for. You can't handle what I'm dealing with. So we're just gonna go separate directions to what we're gonna do. Cause I'm not playing. I'm certainly not gonna be vulnerable with you if that's how you're doing so much. Shut up. So yeah, I was done with that. I was not talking to a lawyer. And really, if you want to go the route of, oh, this had such an impact on me, you have to continuously go to these appointments to build your case. And that's just the reality of it. But anyways, as this is going on, my car insurance is actually slowly dropping. Not by much, but something. And then I get my settlement check. So my car insurance shoots right back up. And I went from like $450 to I think the lowest was like $320, between $3 and $320. So that's still really significant for a monthly expense for car insurance. And then it's back up to $400 again. So I've worked my way back down to $349, which is pathetic. That's pathetic. $340 to have to spend that much. But these are the things that are counting against me. And on top of all of that, a lot of insurance companies these days, I think this is such BS. I don't think it's their business, but they will also take your credit score into account as well. So if you've racked up some debt and you're not paying it off, your car insurance might, which is ridiculous. You are punished for being poor. You are punished for having financial hardship. And I don't think auto insurance needs to be attached to that. Can I make my auto insurance payments? All I want are reasonable auto insurance payments. But to give you an example, as I was searching the other day, I come across a quote and they're like, your insurance will be $260 a month. And I'm like, well, that's suspiciously great, but I was like, I pulled my card. I was like, okay, let's do this. And then I look at the 6 months premium and I'm like, something really, $260 a month does not make sense. Like, somewhere your math is wrong. So I go to the next page to finalize, and it says I need to put $1,300 down and then pay $260 a month for 5. Is this a joke? Is this an actual joke? Am I in the Twilight Zone right now? Like, I understand that certain things that happened are impacting my ability to get the cheapest car insurance available. I get that. But this is ridiculous. I already did my paycheck budget for February 3rd. The first thing I'm going to have to do after I pay rent February 3rd is deal with my insurance. I'm going to end up with a more expensive insurance policy, and I'm going to have to pay more upfront. Plus, I've had a full day now without insurance, so that, who knows, even from getting a quote today versus tomorrow might have another impact against me. Like, I'm so over this. I'm so done with this. Like, I was ready. February was supposed to be my first month that was good in a while. And then this happens. It's just... So anyways, my January was okay. My February is already crap. And now you know why. Now you have a full, probably a more full explanation than you wanted, but that is why. Now, I did mention I'm going to start doing like a little bit of a side hustle challenge. I am holding true to that. I'm kind of trying to figure out schedule-wise what I want to do, where I want to get started. I want to bring even just an additional $150 a month would help, because sometimes what makes me have to go to the point of accepting late fees is, I have just under the amount I need to make this payment by this date. So it doesn't even have to be a massive amount. Now, if I get to a point where all my bills are paid on time and I'm not catching late fees and interest and all that, that's awesome. But then from there, I do need to massively increase the amount that I'm setting aside to savings. So quite a bit for me to tackle, quite a bit for me to think about, big decisions over the next couple of days. My February recap should be interesting. As of now, I feel like by the end of February, I'll be in a bit of a more positive space and I'll kind of be able to readjust. That's really the biggest thing when you have financial issues, is just readjusting. And then, like I said, for March, I do have 3 paychecks instead of 1, so hopefully that will help me out a little bit. And that's all I have for this video, and I will see you in the next one.